Hey, what's going on? And welcome to my channel. My name is Albert, and in this channel, if you're new here, I've been documenting my progress on trying to sell puts on Tesla, trying to make money that way, and I've been documenting the entire process. Um, and today I'll go over what I've been up to. Before that, though, I want to talk a little bit about the Q2 earnings that came out yesterday. Obviously, I think they were great with some caveats, but yeah, the stock price is up like 10% today. So the reason for that, I think, is because of the guidance. They said that they're going to hit the 50% growth that they've been talking about for the last, I don't know I don't know how many number of years have been saying it, but they've been guiding 50% growth, and they reaffirmed it today, even with all the Q2 shutdowns and everything. One of my favorite pastimes is reading news on Tesla and getting mad over it because it's wrong. So a couple of things that I've been seeing recently, or just today, really, a lot of people are complaining. A lot of headlines are complaining about gross margin being down, which obviously is important because if they're saying like, oh, if Tesla's a software company, they should have high margins, and they do have really high margins for a manufacturing company. Which, just for some reference, Tesla's, I guess gross margin is like 25%. Toyota's probably like 15, right? Or their operating margin is like 20%. Toyota's probably like 10 or 7, right? So obviously how it works is if you sell more cars, you have economies of scale, so each car you sell becomes cheaper to make, so your margin gets bigger, right? If your factory is shut down for, let's say, a month in a whole entire quarter, then your margins are going to go down because you're not selling as many cars. I think that just logically should have been expected that gross margins are down. So anyone who's surprised saying, "Oh, this is terrible," hasn't really thought deeper about it, in my opinion, because it's not like their processes are getting worse. It's just that they didn't sell as many cars because the factory was shut down for an entire month because the government made them shut their factory down. Another thing that I'm seeing is they're like, oh, Tesla only made $620 million this year in this quarter in free cash flow, and they made $900 million from the Bitcoin sale or whatever. So they would have made $0 if they didn't have that Bitcoin sale. So that's false. I just want to throw it out there. That money they made from Bitcoin is not related at all to their free cash flow. It's not in the same line item. It's already included. It's not included in their free cash flow. Just throwing it out there. So if you see anyone say that, you can say, haha, this guy's a fucking idiot because this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, and then so Tesla sold Bitcoin, 75% of their Bitcoin for a profit, and they're holding 25% of that Bitcoin for a loss, and they have to report that loss in their earnings, right? So that's what happened. So that's good. I'm happy they sold it because now I think more people, like I guess more serious investors or institutional investors will be more open to Tesla because they're not putting like a small percentage of their revenue or their money into Bitcoin. Keep in mind, Tesla has like $18 billion in cash that they're holding, so they have a lot of cash. All right. So on to what's going on with me personally. Yeah, I got assigned at 890. Yeah, I got super confident. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna hold this put until like the day or 2 days before, then I'm gonna close it out. I just want to maximize, profits or whatever. And eventually, I got assigned like 2 weeks early, which I didn't think was gonna happen. I don't know why. I think in the past I was so worried about getting assigned, I would close it. I would roll everything like 2 weeks in advance, 3 weeks in advance, and sometimes you just roll too early, right? So yeah, that's kind of what happened. So yeah, I got burned. I had to buy 100 shares of Tesla for 890, which isn't terrible. Luckily, I had the cash sitting around to buy it, so that worked out. Sometimes I don't, so luckily I did. And then another thing that happened was because the stock price ran up today, like $70. I was actually thinking that was a good thing, right? Because I have a 1-to-1, or I have a 1 delta now because I own 100 shares. If I had the put, I would not have gained 100 times. Let's call it $70. I would have gained $7,000 from that. I would have gained some percentage of that, maybe like 50% of that, right? Because the option price doesn't move 1-to-1 with the stock price, right? Because it's obviously an option, right? So let's say, for example, I was holding this 890 put. It ran up 10%. Or let's call it $70, I probably would have only gained like $4,000, $5,000 from that put. Versus I'm holding 100 shares, then yeah, obviously it goes up. The downside is, I have to buy the freaking 100 shares, but I think in a couple of days or in the near future, I'll break even here, and then what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start selling 890 calls against it, which hopefully will give you some premium. So there's that. Another thing that happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks is that I was able to close out on this long dated put I was holding. And let me go in detail on my thought process here. And this was actually a big mistake that I made, and it actually caused a lot of issues for me, and it created a lot of stress as well. So I had this bright idea like 6 months ago, or I forgot how long ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. I was like, why don't I sell a really, really far out put for at the money, uh, and I'll collect that premium, and then I'll use that premium to do other stuff with it, right? And then I'll sell it on margin. So basically what happened was, in this example, I sold a put for 830, right? And I collected, this is when I bought it back, but I collected about $25,000 in premium. So this put, when I sell it, it takes up like 50K of margin or like credit, right? So either I have 50K in cash or I have 50K with the stocks that's getting held in margin, right? And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, so if I have 50K in margin that I'm not using, and I use that to sell the put, and then I get 25K, I can take that 25K with some other cash I'm using, and I can use that to do other stuff, which is sell like a cash secured put that's shorter, right? So I will have the cash to secure, let's say a second put I was going to sell, and if I got a sign, I would have the money to put up for it. Okay, that's what I was thinking. So what I realized later, like way later, is that it doesn't work that way. The margin you have is just constant. So let's say I have 50K in margin, and I do this, right? I get extra 25K. Then now I have 25K in margin now, right? I didn't gain margin from it. I had 50K in margin before. I use it on this. Now I got 25K in cash. Now I have 50K minus 25K margin. Okay, right? What I could have just done. Imagine I have 50K in margin, right? What I could have just done is I could have just sold that at the money short-term put. And then if I get assigned, let's say I sold it at like $700, right? If I get assigned at 700, you only need like 40% of that cash to put up. So I can buy 100 shares of Tesla at 700 with like 30K, right? So imagine if I did have 50K of margin, then I could have just done it without the whole long dated put. I didn't actually need to have that cash, right? So I didn't actually understand that. So what I ended up doing is I sold these two really long dated puts, which cost like, 100K to pay in the day. And that just like made me have less margin to use, right? So then what ended up happening when the stock price dropped, it started putting me in a really tight spot because I started getting nervous, right? So getting really nervous about things because now I have less margin than I should have, and I should have never have sold these puts to begin with. So that actually caused a lot of stress for me. And luckily everything's fine now. And basically my point is I bought it back. So I actually ended up breaking even. So right when I broke even, I bought it back. Another thing, if you're following along, another thing to note is like it's not the biggest deal in the world because these prices don't move that often. So because it's so far in the future, so that delta is very low. So like I could have just like bought it back at any time and lost $1,000 or $2,000. But I ended up buying it back for pretty much $300 less than I paid for. So I lost $300 on it. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was like I was holding this put for no reason because I was trying to do something smart and I ended up fucking myself. I didn't really fuck myself, but I just ended up like causing a lot of stress that I didn't need extra stress I didn't need. Okay, so here's kind of where I'm at now. Obviously, I think we stopped at this. I didn't do anything in June, and then in July, I sold a call, and I made $500 from it. Last week. I sold a call like last week. I closed it out before earnings, made $500 real quick, and then I paid $300 for that put this thing I just mentioned. I'm basically break even. And then this number right here, I'm not really sure if I want to add this in, but I want to be representative of how things are going. So like I just took the 890 and subtracted the 815 stock price it is today. So I'm down $7,500 so far from that the assignment I took. So that's that. Yeah, not the biggest in the world. This isn't really recognized losses just yet, but that's kind of where I'm at. So I really haven't done anything. The only big thing that happened to me, which was a positive, is I was able to buy this back at basically break even, lose $300 on it. But now I'm only holding 2 puts here, and now I'm like really cool if things go to shit, which I think might happen. So. Yeah. So here you can see this 850 put is another one I sold for way out, and you can see I sold it for like probably 25k, and right now it's at 26k, right? So if I want to buy it back, I can pay 26k, or I can just wait for it to go back. Luckily, today was a big day, so it came up a little bit. But now I'm not holding like two of these anymore. I was holding like two of these and then another couple puts, so I got a little nervous like during the drop. But now I'm super chill. So like one other thing that I learned is like I don't think it's worth the stress. Like all this fancy stuff I'm doing, I don't think it's worth the stress. So I'm really trying to just like chill out. So like when this breaks even, I'll probably buy this back as well, and then I'll just like hold one put at a time or something. Because when it was going well, I was making like 10, 15k a month, and that was really fun. But then that amount of fun I had did not outweigh the amount of like stress and stuff I had when things were going poorly. Just because the downside is way bigger than the upside. And also, it's like, hey, if you like, okay, if you make 15k this month, that's amazing, that's great, right? And it's really awesome, but it's really not that big of a deal compared to like the money you make from just stock price changing, right? Or like let's say like 30 years from now, it's not gonna make that big of a deal. But if you take a really big drop and you lose everything, you get margin called and you get wiped out, then that will really completely fuck your future. So that's the one thing I learned from doing this. But also I read it in a book called The Psychology of Money, which is a really good book, where I didn't realize like it's not about making money sometimes. It's about not losing money. Because once you lose money, then your opportunity to make money goes down a lot. So that's kind of what I learned in the last 3 weeks where I wasn't really doing much. Really good day for all Tesla holders today, but I'm not really gonna get fooled by this. Probably will be like a bear trap. That's what I think, or a bull trap. So my plan is I'm gonna wait for it to go up within maybe like to 850 or something. Then I'll sell 890 call, and if it goes up past 890, then I basically broke even on that, and I could just sell puts at 890 again. If it goes back down, then I'll just make a little bit of premium. But yeah, but I'm gonna just kind of try to take it easy from now on. I'm not gonna shoot for making like 10, 15k a month. Maybe like 1 to 3k a month would be a better shot or better goal. So that's where I'm at. Hope you followed along and hope that made sense. Talk to you the next one. Thanks.